got so big that you're full of this kind.
Hello, and welcome into this week's spoiler review for Star Wars Resistance. We're going to be talking about two episodes today, A New World and No Safe Place. They both went up this morning. I'm going to be chatting about them both, so if you have not watched both of the episodes, be sure to do so before you watch the review. In this review, I'm going to try to go through it all chronologically, therefore I'm going to try to talk about one episode and then the next, but I might be jumping around a little bit, because they do work really well together as a pair. That said, I do kind of want to talk about how the two episodes work together. They really aren't a part 1 and part 2, necessarily. Typically, when you have a part 1 and part 2, like we had a couple of weeks ago when we met the Resistance spy, part 1 ends with a cliffhanger. It is half of the story. This is more like a 2-episode story arc. A New World doesn't end in a cliffhanger. It ends with clearly new things are going to happen and clearly new things are afoot, but you're not left at the end of the episode like, oh no, what's going to happen next? You're like, oh, I want to see what happens next. So they seem to be more of a story arc than a two-parter. Not that that's really that big of a deal, but I kind of wondered going in why they had two distinct episode names and it wasn't like a name part 1 and part 2 like the end of season 1 of Resistance. I do find it unusual that they're doing it for these episodes and not the series finale, which I would have assumed they would have done as a double header, but their reasons are their own, and we may never know them. But with that, let's get into the episodes themselves. This episode starts right off the bat with Kaz trying to fix the fireball. I do like seeing this. It is a subtle nod to Kaz is getting better, considering when we look at the first couple of episodes, Kaz doesn't know how to do anything with his ship. He's coming off of the New Republic Navy, where they had people to be mechanics. He was just a pilot. Getting used to the mechanic pilot life was a stretch for him, and he's certainly not A+ at it yet. He's not at Niku levels, but he's able to stand on his own 2 feet or fix ships on his own 2 feet, so that's nice to see. But he's worried because the ship is going through some rumblings, and he bumps into Niku, and it turns out it's just turbulence, because they're entering the atmosphere on a world. This was an interesting look at the role he's playing on the ship, because Doza has decided that they're going to try to scout out this world. Presumably Yeager would have known, but Kaz didn't. So either this was a very quick decision, something where Doza found the planet and went there with just kind of like a snap instinct, or it's just not something that Kaz is in the loop on. It's not something that he would necessarily be given a part of, the decision of where the ship would go. But what I like more than that is the kind of obvious thing that the brash, cocky pilot would want is to know, when did you decide and why didn't you ask me and why don't I get to opine on where we land the ship? Kaz isn't actually upset about that. He recognizes that finding a world for the people of the Colossus is a good thing. What happens instead is Kaz has to decide, oh, is this a good thing for me? I know it's a good thing for everybody else, but what does this mean for me? Kaz started the show as a Resistance spy, and for so long in the series, what was best for the people of the Colossus was also the best for the Resistance. The Colossus was facing down the First Order, so Kaz could be on the Colossus and be with his friends and help the people of the Colossus and be a part of the fight. Now Kaz is coming to understand that those two roads could be diverging, that what's best for the Colossus may not actually be the fight with the First Order, and it might be. That's a discussion that he's starting to have with himself, and a discussion of what's best for him and what does he want, and does he want to be a part of the fight versus the First Order, or does he want to be a part of the Colossus? And it hits him really hard, really fast, because it hasn't occurred to him that this was ever a decision he would have to make. My first thought when we saw the planet of Aosa was this was gorgeous. We've seen the planet in the trailers. I knew the planet was gorgeous from the trailers, but it blew my mind. And the animation was so stellar. Just the shading in the oceans to show shallow water versus deeper water, the vibrant colors. I don't know if it's just because we've been in space for so long this season, or if it really is just that much of a step up, but the episode looked spectacular. This was so fun to watch. And the planet design, it's so hard to have a planet design that doesn't look exactly like a dozen other planets we've seen in Star Wars. And we've certainly seen oceanic planets, we've seen coral-based planets, we have seen planets like this, but it did manage to look unique. The aliens managed to look unique. It just felt like a really cool place to spend 2 episodes getting to know. Yeager and Captain Doza are chatting. Doza is really anxious to do what's best for his people and find a planet where they can settle down, start gathering resources, and live a life again. Yeager is a little bit more skeptical. He's not ready to get his hopes up just yet. I think Yeager does agree that finding a place to stay is what's best for the Colossus, but he's just not anxious to go to like the first good-looking planet they find. Yeager then sends the Aces out to explore the planet, and I liked seeing again how tight-knit the Aces were. When we started the show, they were the people who lived in the tower. They were the racers. They were always up. They were always away. They were sometimes kind of coming to talk to Kaz in a rival way. Over time, Kaz got to know Tora, but now it really just feels like the Aces are a part of the Colossus. And I've said before that I really liked that the Aces were always good at heart, that it would have been so easy to make them the uppity, jerky, terrible racers that get like replaced by all of the good racers elsewhere in the station. That would have been a very kind of cliche kid show thing to do. I like that they started as this mysterious group, and then we actually get to feel like we're joining them and we're being a part of this group, as opposed to them just being a bunch of jerks. Kaz and Griff team up to go explore, and it gets us some revelations I've been kind of waiting for a while. And it's something that, in hindsight, was probably kind of obvious. I just had never connected the dots myself. We know Doza left the Empire. We knew Doza left the Empire for Tora's mother. We knew Griff was former Imperial, but now we see that Griff came to the Colossus with Doza. That they have one of the longer running relationships over anybody else on the station, outside of a few other examples. Kaz even says, oh, that's why you're so loyal to Doza. Griff is such a wild ball character. He kind of does what he wants. We've seen him break rules and races and stuff before, and yet he remains loyal to the station. Well, it's because Doza used to be his commanding officer, and that adds a lot of history to what's going on. The other issue, though, with Griff is that Griff looks Imperial. So Kaz finds both a stormtrooper helmet to prove that First Order had been there. He also finds the remains of a rebel base, which shows us what the First Order's been up to. They're systematically shutting down other rebellion bases. I think that this could be a reaction to the Battle of Crate. After all, the Resistance hid in a former rebellion base. If they don't want that to happen again, and we are post Last Jedi, this could be just the First Order recently going around trashing rebellion bases as a result of what's been going on elsewhere in the films, kind of giving us another hint as to what's going on in the greater galaxy. Now, what happens is Kaz and Griff end up captured by the locals on the planet. They get captured because Griff looks Imperial. They think that the Colossus looks Imperial, and we now know that it is a former Imperial ship, so that makes sense. So what we have is the good guys showing up with dressings of what the bad guys wear, and the locals, understandably, don't know what to do. They just got wrecked by First Order. They say that the village looks kind of recently trashed. And so that's where the conflict of the episode comes from. And I liked how they handled this, because eventually the locals go to the Colossus. They start attacking the Colossus because they think the Colossus is the enemy. Yeager is so adamant that they're not going to engage and they're not going to get in a fight. Niku does try some diplomacy, but it doesn't exactly work out. They are bent on attacking first and asking questions later because they think that the new arrivals are the Empire, and it's understandable. But even through all of that, Yeager's like, no, we are the trespassers. We are the people who showed up on their front lawn. Try not to fight if we cannot fight. Doza, of course, is more willing to try to fight because he's trying to defend the people on the Colossus. And this is what I like about Doza and Yeager working together, because again, it's something where you could have really easily taken Doza down this road of, now that he's in charge of all of these people, the pressure has gone to his head, the pirates have tried to mutiny on him, he could have gone back in his Imperial ways and create a conflict between him and Yeager, but instead, they're different sides of the same coin, each remembering important priorities. Doza's top priority is protecting the people on the Colossus, and there's nothing wrong or immoral about that. He's absolutely responsible for these people who absolutely did not ask to be put in the situation they've been put in. However, Yeager is absolutely correct that when they go to a planet, they are the trespassers and they can't just come in and take whatever they want, like the Empire does. Rather than making that a conflict, it's just two really good men reminding each other of what the other one's fighting for, and that's why they're such a strong leadership team. Doza has his heart in a right place, and Yeager has his heart in a right place, and between the two of them, they can find the best path forward. I'll also just say that I liked seeing the battle droids again from last week. Even B1, who has been reprogrammed by Niku, is still acting like a very typical B1 battle droid, and that was just kind of a fun moment, but one that shows that they really don't stand a chance because these locals can pack a punch. They are ultimately rescued because of what Kaz and Griff are up to. Kaz and Griff have been captured. They have a really important conversation about whether or not this planet can ever be safe for them because the First Order has been there. Kaz hopes that because the First Order has already been and gone, that they won't return. And Griff is far more cynical about that. And that brings up another kind of big discussion in the show. In these couple of episodes. So as Kaz is deciding for himself, do I want to sit and rest and take this kind of earned safety, or do I want to go back out into the fight? Well, the larger question is, can the Colossus ever not be a part of the fight? The First Order is specifically looking for the Colossus. Do they have the option of finding a place to hide, or is it better for them to go join the fight as a whole? Kaz and Griff get taken to see their queen. The queen is voiced by Lucy Lawless, who is known for many a thing, including Xena Warrior Princess. So it's really fun to hear her in the Star Wars universe, and that their meeting is a sign as to why we don't put Kaz in charge of diplomacy. But they have a conversation that explains, why the locals think that the people of the Colossus are bad news. They get marched off towards some sort of execution. Kaz spots some people who are injured. He's already been told by the queen that they lost their healer. Kaz sneaks away from the group through a trick on CB's part and hits one of the injured folk with a med pack. The med pack heals the person quickly so that the queen understands, like, oh, we have ways to help you. It buys Kaz the chance to save the people of the Colossus and show that they aren't the bad guys. There's some interesting things going on here, again, because Kaz wants to help as much as he wants to be helped. I do believe that. But Griff is saying the people of this planet don't want their help. And that is another big topic going on in these episodes. When is it the right thing to do the right thing? Helping the people of Aosa is the right thing. They're injured, they're dying. The Colossus has the means to help them. But is forcing help on them the right thing? Is it someone's responsibility? Is it the good guy's responsibility to go in and help when people might not understand what help is out there for them? Or is that just pushing ideals and ways on them? Ultimately, this situation goes pretty smoothly. The person does get healed. The queen realizes that they do actually have help to give, and so they go to the Colossus. Tensions die down, and she and Doza are able to work out an understanding. They give her some supplies to help her people. As a result, she says that, you guys seem pretty cool. She remembers having a good relationship with the people of the rebellion before they left, and because these people of the Colossus seem to be like the people of the rebellion, and because they help them, they get their chance to stay. And I liked that a lot too. I liked seeing this legacy of the rebellion that lets the Colossus kind of have this chance where they might not have otherwise, and it shows the honor of the Aosans, and it was a really good resolution to that first half. As the episode draws to a close, Kaz talks to Yeager about what he's going through and how he's not sure whether or not the fight will ever actually end, and Yeager says he doesn't know, but whatever happens, they will face it together. Which takes us to the second episode, No Safe Place. So right when, from the get-go, right with the title, you know that everything great that just happened is about to be undone real fast. That said, the episode starts out with some really cute moments. The queen is walking around with Doza, seeing the market, seeing the Colossus. We meet some familiar faces who offer her a Gorg. That whole exchange was just really amusing. And it shows that she really does want to get to know these people, that they are, the people of the Colossus are trying to build a relationship with her, that this really could have been something good for both parties. But as this goes on, Kaz is watching the skies, watching the races, and knows that something is not right, and he's got to make some decisions. He tells Yeager that he's going to leave and join the greater fight with the Resistance. Yeager is saddened by this, shocked by this, but ultimately does understand it. Kaz calls Norath, who we'd seen in the previous episodes, and says, hey, I'll take you up on that offer, I want to meet up. He gets ready to go, and then comes the first of a series of goodbyes. Doza actually comes down to Yeager's hangar to say goodbye to Kaz, and they have some really good words, and they're leaving on good terms. And Doza says, he really respects the decision that Kaz is making for the reasons that he's making it. This is the point where it really hit me that the show's ending. Like, I've been aware, obviously, that this is the final season. It told us in the trailer. I've been talking about how it's the final season in all of these reviews. But suddenly, all of these goodbyes made me realize that this was just prepping us to say goodbye. We've seen the episode, so we know that Kaz doesn't really leave the Colossus, and he doesn't really say goodbye to his friends. But we're all gonna have to say goodbye to Kaz, and Doza, and Niku, and even if these characters live, which I'm presuming most of them, if not all, will, except for some of the baddies, our time with them could be done. Like, I want to hope that we're going to see them again, or we're going to get, like, a sequel show, or this is only ending because now that 9's out, there's, spoiler, I guess, not really for 9, but sure, there's no resistance anymore, because there's nothing to resist, so I'd kind of been hoping that we really were going to get like a 3rd and 4th season. It was just going to be titled something different, but that, we don't know that that's going to happen. We don't know if it'll ever get a sequel show. It might be 10 years before we get a sequel show. And it hit me that we're going to have to say goodbye. Even though I knew it, it was still really, really sad. I'm not sure I'm ready, but at least now I can start this process with a couple of weeks left to go before we say goodbye. With that though, this episode does a really good job of building tension and cutting between a bunch of different things, because now we kind of get back into that parallel storytelling, because this is once again an episode with Tam. So we're following Kaz saying his goodbyes as he's getting ready to leave the Colossus, along with Tam on a Star Destroyer, and presumably, right, we're all waiting to see if she's gonna come and show up on this new world. And again, showing that Jace is really a part of the First Order. And maybe his near-death experience a couple of weeks ago showed him that he's more expendable than he wants to be, but he really is into the First Order. He really thinks that just being a part of it means he's making his mark on the universe. And we see that Tam really just wants to fly, and she's not into the First Order. And so we're seeing Kaz and we're seeing Tam, who both just want to be a part of something, and Kaz is the one that wants to go to the fight, and Tam is the one who is in the fight and actually just wants to fly and kind of be where Kaz is, even though Kaz would never want to be in the First Order, but they've still kind of traded at least stations in life, if not alignments in life. I am really looking forward to when they eventually reconnect and we get to see any kind of conversation between them. We go back to Kaz for the other goodbyes. Niku's goodbye, I mean, he's on his hands and knees, he's crying, he's hugging. Kaz gives him his trophy that we'd seen all the way back in the beginning of season 1, has kind of popped up in a couple episodes here and there. And the idea of, like, Kaz and Niku, like, not being together, I don't know, like, I really wanted Kaz to say to Niku, like, come with me. Like, I want Kaz with the Resistance, I want Kaz to join the Resistance, but I don't want Kaz away from Niku. So it was just like I wasn't ready for this. I also just like the sound as Niku is hugging Kaz, that just makes it sound like Kaz's back is breaking, and they keep using that in any of the hug. I don't know, it was just a small detail, but I thought it was kind of funny. And then Tora and Sonara show up, and I love the interaction between Kaz and Tora. In my opinion, they have a really sweet sibling-like relationship. You may not see it that way, but that's how I read it, even like the play punching. I really liked that. I was mad that Mr. Yeager had to pop in and not let Kaz and Sonara say goodbye, because I mean, we've seen them kind of say goodbye in season 1, but I want to see what a goodbye would be like in season 2, since Kaz got to say goodbye to her, we haven't seen her say goodbye to him, and I'm waiting for something there, personally, but there's still time. The show still has time, but Yeager was being a massive, something I'm not going to say on this channel, and just for the record, I would like that noted. Kaz and Yeager talk, and shout out to the planet of Batu. The planet of Batu is, of course, the planet of Galaxy's Edge. It is Black Spire Outpost. It is something that I think we've been kind of hoping to see in the show. I personally thought some of the worlds we've already seen were going to end up being Batu, and they weren't. So just hearing the name Batu, like, spoken was really cool. We know that Yeager has been to Batu, if you look at his family photo back from the first season. So seeing that, or hearing that connection was really cool. Yeager gives Kaz the fireball. Kaz goes for a hug, and he goes for a handshake, and then pulls him in for a hug, and it was a really sweet moment, and it's just, oh, the show's ending, and I'm not ready for this show to end. Kaz leaves, probe droid picks up on it, they get into a tussle in space that kind of reminded me of a part from Revenge of the Sith. Kaz is able to stop the probe from attacking him, but his ship gets kind of wrecked in the process. CB gets shut down in the process. The probe is still able to send out a message, and now the tension is really getting ramped up because Pyre gets the message, calls for all the ties, and now Tam is aware that she's finally getting to fly, but she has to fly against the Colossus. Kaz is able to get the ship up and running. Kaz is, like, doing his Yeager impression as a way to, like, guide him and how he should fix the ship, and it actually kind of works. It was a very classic Kaz moment. I like that a lot. He's able to get back to the hangar on the Colossus, and when he lands, I really liked Yeager yelled, "What in Castellan?" Castellan is the name of the world they were on before, throughout all of season 1, so it was just basically saying, like, what on earth? It was like, what in Castellan? So I just liked that as an expression. Kaz warns Doza. He's having a hard time warning Doza because Niku's hugging him. It was just, like, a lot of tension and a lot of action, but also a lot of, like, really good character beats all happening simultaneously. It was really well done, in my opinion. Doza looks for signals, finds out the First Order's there, and boom, we have a giant battle. Doza is personally very crushed that this new world that he's been searching for months, and he does say months in the episode, which, if it's been months, we're definitely past The Last Jedi, and we're definitely getting close to the rise of Skywalker. So a lot more time has been passing in the season than we've been aware of, and it was really good to have that cue. Doza is crushed because they can't have this new world, but he also knows that they can't have this new world, and the fight begins. He tells the queen that he's sorry, and they'll go, but the queen's like, no, you've been awesome, so we're gonna help you fight, and boy are her people awesome in a fight. Yeager surprisingly lets Kaz take his starfighter, because the fireball's been wrecked. Yeager kind of regrets it, but he knows it's the right thing, and Kaz gets to go out and join the fight. It's amazing, because it's basically the aces versus everyone. It's just like this handful of racers versus all of these TIE fighters, plus the locals, and it turns into this big scrap just to try to get the Colossus away. Tam is now flying against her friends. We see her pick out Yeager's ship, and so she thinks it's Yeager in that moment. We see the locals jumping from ship to ship, which was great. Once again, the animation was just amazing. I can't get over the designs on the planet. I loved all of it. Kaz comes up with a really reckless plan to let the Colossus get away, and it's at that point that Tam goes, whoever's in that starfighter isn't Yeager, it's gotta be Kaz, because this plan is terrible. And I liked that she was able to figure out which one was Kaz. She ends up following Kaz. We see her get her lock. She's delaying. She's not taking a shot right away when she could. Kaz is able to get a shot off on the Star Destroyer. And then Tam, instead of going after Kaz, saves the Star Destroyer from blowing up. Ultimately, the Colossus is able to get away. And in some ways, Kaz is able to kind of recognize her based on her piloting, which I'm just going to kind of give to the show. I'm not sure how much Kaz has actually seen Tam pilot, if we're being totally honest, because we hadn't seen it at any point in the show. But I like to think that Kaz believes that Tam is a great pilot and a better than average TIE fighter pilot. And so I kind of want to just let the show have a gimme, even though I think it's a little sketchy. But what I really like about this moment is it gives Tam an out. I've been saying that they have been delaying this moment for a long time, because the longer you draw this out and see Tam as we draw it out, the worse it makes Tam. So in this moment, it wasn't, is she going to shoot Kaz or not? It gives her something else to shoot at. It gives her something else where the First Order can recognize her, and we're not worried. Like, she doesn't get thrown in the brig. She's not about to get executed because she didn't kill Kaz. They're not questioning her. They actually promote her and reward her because she saves the Star Destroyer. So I appreciate that they gave Tam a choice, but the choice also was able to protect Tam for the time being, and so I thought it was just really well constructed to get us through these last couple of weeks. The Colossus is able to get away. Kaz has a conversation with Yeager saying that he thinks it was Tam out there, and he's afraid that Tam would have just shot him, and here we see that Yeager has all but counted Tam out. It's really sad. I really hate to see it. I like Yeager a lot. I think he's right that Tam did make her own decisions, and they have to understand that. But I think he's wrong that they need to just kind of count her out now. And it's sad to see that even Kaz might be starting to believe that. I'm not sure he really will in the end. I think he'll give her another chance, and I hope we see that in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, that was really something to see. As I said, Tam gets a promotion. I think it's interesting. Tyranny calls her Miss Revora instead of referring to her by her numbers. It's like Tam getting a little bit of humanity back as a reward for what she's done. Just everything that's going on in the end there is still continuing to set up the showdown and hopefully reconnection between Kaz and Tam. But those are my thoughts on these 2 episodes. The show will be done by the end of this month, and that is just wild. I think we have like 3 episodes left, 3 weeks left, something like that. And yeah, I'm just not ready. But let me know what you guys thought of these episodes in the comments. If you're not already, follow us on all of the socials. And until next time, keep it real, fly casual.
Cooking can be fun.